Oh, we're going to go live stream.
Hooray.
Miami's hurricane code.
Uh-huh.
All righty, so we should be we should be live, folks.
Let's see.
All right.
Will this be on our YouTube channel after? I'm just wondering if Courtney will have a chance to watch it because I think he's working tonight.
Carolyn,
Yes,
you need to
indeed.
unmute.
Yep, that's the idea.
Awesome.
Carolyn, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Florida People's Party live stream. Tonight, we're going to be interviewing a candidate for the Senate who's running against Marco Rubio. Is Stephen Grant, mayor of Boynton Beach, Florida, who's running as an NPA. So Stephen, would you please introduce yourself and give us a little background about yourself?
Thank you for having me here in front of the People's Party. To begin with, I feel like there's an opportunity for today to make the future better because we can't change the past. And so just a background of where I began as the mayor is that I raised $3,000 to a 5-time incumbent's $45,000. And I was told many, many times that I was never going to win and that all I was doing was wasting, my time. I should try to do something else. And that is where I never believed them for a second. I always felt that under self-determination, it's my opportunity, God gives me the opportunity to do my best each and every day. And because I care about my city, the businesses and the people around me, that I needed to be the voice for the city because I didn't like any of the other candidates. And that is what I'm doing here today, is that I do not feel a Republican or Democrat will represent the interests of the people, the citizens of the state of Florida to make the world a better place. And that is where I'm campaigning as a no party affiliation candidate to make sure that we are understanding compromise, we are understanding moderation and responsibility, that the social contract between the people of the United States and the government should always keep as our #1 goal. Because we, as I mentioned earlier, a sign of friendship is the ability to agree to disagree. And I don't feel our current political system is playing by those rules. I feel they're playing a zero-sum game. In order for one party to win, the other has to lose. And I feel that is to the detriment of our country.
Well, thank you. Can you be a little bit more specific about your platform for running for Senate in for Florida?
Well, there's a lot of different issues that I could speak about. And so I was hoping that you'd want to speak on those specific issues. For me personally, I like to think of myself as a fiscally responsible, socially moderate person, which means I don't believe the federal government should spend money it doesn't have, nor should it make individual decisions for individuals. This is kind of the mission or that I have, or the vision that I have for the federal government, because you have to have that core belief system in order to make all the different decisions, because there is the numerous different decisions that I have to make as the mayor, because dealing with the police department is different than the sanitation, just like the library is different than the utility. And making sure that the decisions are being made for the future and not necessarily just for today is something that I believe strongly with. And so that is kind of where I am trying to do my best to make sure that all Floridians are voting for the candidate they like the best, not the one they dislike the least.
Thank you. And so with that in mind, tell us your stand on Medicare and single payer system.
So from my knowledge, Medicare is a right to all citizens who are over the age of 65 versus Medicaid, which applies to people who are in the poverty level or children. You know, I had to deal with my own insurance issues with my family because of coverage, of a health insurance plan that didn't cover everything. And so the way that the government should be involved is to have the ability for people to be insured. However, one of the things is that we need to do a reform of our healthcare industry where Medicare currently sets the rates for what they'll pay. However, not all insurance pays that same way, nor do the hospitals or medical professionals charge that same way. And so we have to figure out, how do we keep our capitalistic country of allowing our medical professionals to charge for their value and their services, and not bankrupting the individuals that have to pay for them. The point of insurance, because at one time I was a life and health insurance salesperson, is that it is a reduction of liability, because you are spreading over the cost of numerous people the expense of damages or liability or payment. And to have what our country would need to have is to have a government-sponsored insurance company that is able to make sure everyone is covered, but by allowing our capitalist country to remain having all of the other insurance plans. For example, here in Florida, we have Citizens Insurance Company that is the state-sponsored homeowners insurance, because we wanted to make sure that everyone is able to get homeowners insurance. I'd like to bring that to the federal government. One of the main differences is that Citizens is only allowed to collect 10% in administrative costs, and 90% goes out to premiums, whereas our health insurance companies are allowed to collect 20% in administrative costs and only pay out 80% in premiums. So I feel like we need to find a balance with the insurance companies and have a state-sponsored of insurance company, so that everyone has access to health insurance.
Thank you for that. In the state of Florida, they had the option to expand Medicare for their disabled and elderly and disadvantaged in the state, and the Republican administration chose not to do it. What would be your stand on it?
Similar to what I just stated, is that I believe that it should be expanded. But one of the reasons why I did not want to be part of the Democratic Party was because I made over the $53,000 that would help subsidize the Affordable Care Act for me. So one of the things that we cannot do as a government is create a welfare cliff, so that we are saying that if you make $49,000, you're going to have to pay 50% of the premiums, and have a much lower deductible, versus someone who makes $55,000 that has to pay 100% of the premiums at a higher deductible.
Okay, thank you. And at the People's Party, we believe that big money shouldn't be part of the political scene. What's your view on that?
So the aspect of big money is having the ability to donate more than, I guess, what an individual can donate, which is $2,900. And that is something that I would agree with. Currently, we're dealing with the Citizens United Supreme Court case that allows for corporations to donate to political action committees and political parties, but not to individual candidates. For me, not being part of a political party, that means I can't get money that way. And I do not have a political action committee that is associated with my campaign, so I can't get money that way. And so the most that I can get is $2,900, and I don't consider that to be big money. However, people who make those
Yep, Stephen froze for a minute, folks.
for people who make those donations may be from big money and may try to spend their money elsewhere through their own political action committee or non-connected PAC.
Okay, thank you for that point of view. What is your view on the environment in the state of Florida?
So one of the things that I've learned as the mayor is that there's two types of environments. There is the natural environment, and then there's the human environment. So I'm going to first talk about the natural environment. And one of the things that I've tried to campaign for is to use native flora and fauna to reduce the nutrients in our freshwater systems. The state legislature and the state executive agencies want to spend millions of dollars for mechanical and chemical means to reduce the nutrient levels that leads to blue-green algae or red tide. And my perspective is let's try to work with nurseries and to expand the flora and fauna to help our ecosystem. In the city of Boynton Beach, I signed on to the Global Compact of Mayors for Climate Change. We are doing what we can to increase the urban canopy to avoid the heat island effect. And the main thing with the natural environment that we have to be aware of is the destruction of industries that rely on pollution or carbon producing products. And that is where we as a government need to ease and transfer people who are in the oil producing plastic companies to help them switch over to a more renewable, reusable commodity source. One of the main ones that I am trying to promote is the hemp product that our federal government, after I think it was 80 or 90 years, decided that it should be legal again. This is something where we have the ability and technology to create a renewable commodity that could be used as a plastic, because the first cellulose plastic was coming from trees. And so that's something that I'd hopefully try to bring back to our society and understand that there are unintended consequences when we go straight to environmental friendly activities. One of the unintended consequences of electric cars is that they are not paying for the roads that they drive on. The federal and state county and city governments collect gas tax to pay for the roads. And the tolls that they collect are for operations and maintenance and hopefully to expand other roads. So there has to be that understanding that if we do something, there will be a reaction from it. And so we have to keep in mind that government is a service, that we have to, we get what we pay for. So if we're not paying into the government, then the government isn't going to be providing a service. So hopefully I touched on some of the aspects of the natural environment that I am definitely in favor of what we can do for a circular economy to make sure that we don't leave litter on the ground, because we understand that it is a valuable resource for our future. As for the human environment, this is a long topic, and so I don't know how much time you want to give me for this one, but I'd like to just boil it down to the state that I feel I follow what Jane Elliott and Josephine Baker stated, that we are all humans, we're all the same species, and the categorization that our government does or organizations do to create our own groups is both beneficial and harmful at the same time. Because how do we categorize people? It creates sometimes fear, sometimes ignorance, and that is where, I had to explain to my city why we need to celebrate Juneteenth a year before it was a federal holiday. The fact is, I just learned about it in 2020. And after learning about it, and after George Floyd, it was the time to say, this is the time to do something. And when a resident said, well, why are we celebrating a certain race's holiday? I had to inform him that this is the end of the Civil War, which applies to all Americans. The actual Civil War ended in April of 1865, but it was this proclamation from General Granger in Texas when everyone in the Union, or the now Union, knew that the Civil War was over. And so there is a lot of ignorance and that is going on. And the main issue that we have is what's called a cognitive dissonance, which is the belief in your being correct, even though there is evidence that you might not be correct. One of the things that I had to learn is that if you talk to someone who's right once, they may feel they're right all the time, even if they're wrong 99 times out of 100. But because they were right once, they may feel that they will always be right. And being the mayor, I have learned that I can't talk to a wall, but I can talk to people. And so as I was campaigning for mayor, I said I want 9 out of 10 votes, because I know that I can't make everyone understand and I can't have everyone agree to disagree. But I wanted to try. And, for my campaign now for senator, it's not that high of 9 out of 10 votes. I'm going for 2 out of 5 or 4 out of 10, because I feel that 30% are going to go left, 30% are going to go right, but 40% of the state wants to move forward for a better tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. I know you said you read our platform, so you also know that Ralph Nader, I'm going to circle back to something you said earlier, is one of our big supporters, and he no longer likes to refer to it as climate change, but we're in a climate crisis. And I think you probably know that better than most of us here, because you're dealing with the green and the blue tides and the red tides in Boynton Beach. You mentioned that your town is a fishing community that's being devastated by that. So I appreciate you talking about that. The other issue that you brought up, which is one that's become a big issue up here in Northeast Florida, is recycling. And, that's paid for by people's taxes for them to come and take our recycling. And as an example, in Duval County, they're just not picking it up. And now what they've done, even in my county, which is St. Johns County, is tell us that we can't put certain things in recycling that were automatically recyclables before. So I'm questioning whether or not there really is a true recycling program throughout this country and even in this state. So that's another issue that deals with the climate crisis. So I thank you for addressing that. What we want to move on to here is talking about your forming a campaign committee. Can you tell us how far along you are in the process? And
so it's been over a year since I formed my campaign committee. It's a nonprofit organization that is tax exempt under the IRS 527 section. And so I've been filing all of my paperwork with the Division of Corporations, the Federal Elections Committee, and the Internal Revenue Service. So to my knowledge, everything is compliant, and I filed all of the paperwork I needed to on January 31st for the year ending on December 31st.
And how will you be going about in your process for the petitions? Are you going to be able to pay the fee, or are you going to have to collect the 144,000 signatures?
I've spoken to the Supervisor of Elections in Florida, and unless the number changed, I've already raised the $6,960 to get on the ballot.
Very good. Okay. So tell me, obviously you don't, but do you think Rubio has done a good job in representing the people so far, and how would you do things differently?
So one of the things that Marco Rubio has done well is not done much. And so if you don't do anything, you're not going to upset a lot of people because there's really nothing for them to complain about except for you not doing anything. And so that's where, my mentality is to do what I can each and every day, to answer my phones whenever I can, to try to solve the problems that I can, and help the people to solve their problems that I can't. The aspect of being a non-party affiliation in our federal government, we have a few, and they have aligned themselves with the Democratic caucus, and so that's something where I understand it's scary for Floridians to realize that, hey, the Democrats might be the majority or the Republicans might be the majority. But, if you look at the majority of governments, the parliamentary system is that it is a combination of political parties that create the majority. And so that is where I would want to be, and having that third party to say to each of those two parties, we can't have you run roughshod with whatever you want. It's the political seesaw that is going on, where 2016 it was all Republicans, and now 2020 it's all Democrats, and the parties are playing not to lose, which is making them lose. And if we see a midterm election shift of one of the houses, or both, and it's something where we will have compromise because they have to in order to get something done. But it's something that we don't like to see, where compromises should be there for the benefit of the people, not just so that we have to fear that the Congress, or not so that Congress has to fear that the people don't believe they are doing their own job.
That's true. Thank you. Also, the People's Party nationally, as well as the state of Florida, believes very strongly in ranked choice voting. And given that Ron DeSantis is currently pushing a bill by my personal state representative, Tim Houston, in Tallahassee now, to ban ranked choice voting in all its forms in the state of Florida, where do you stand on that?
I actually had one of my city commissioners explain it to me, and it took a while, and it's something where it is advantageous, because then you don't necessarily have a win by plurality, you have a win by majority. And I think that is extremely important, because that's how I became mayor. The 5-time incumbent who outraised me got 42% of the vote, where I got, I believe, 22% of the vote. And it was a runoff between first and second place, and that is where I beat him in the runoff. So I am absolutely in favor of ranked choice voting, because I feel that our current plurality system is not advantageous. And one of the other examples is what we saw with the Democratic Party in 2020. How come in March all of the candidates dropped out? It was almost like a sense is that the whole 2019 debates were just a show, because the Democratic Party chose who they wanted to be.
Well, thank you. I'm very pleased to hear that, Stephen. You have no idea. Now we're going to get into a little bit of a tougher question. Are you going to be willing to take on the sugarcane industry in the state of Florida, and what's your current feeling about them?
So the main issue that I have with the water quality in Florida is the septic tanks. So I've been to the sugarcane fields, and I'm not upset with them for the water quality that they have. I understand the burning of the sugarcane is a very hazardous event because of all the smoke that is associated with it. And so that is something where the sugarcane industry has to be mindful of what they're doing. And if there is another opportunity for them to burn the sugarcane in a more safe environment, I feel that that is something that we need to do and pay a little bit extra for our sugar, because that's what's going to end up happening, is that whatever cost we put onto big sugar is most likely going to end up to the consumers. Here in Palm Beach County, we have a multi-billion-dollar incineration plant for our trash. And so I am aware that you can burn things and not have a very big climate effect. And that is where all of the energy that is going with burning that sugarcane is being wasted. And so if we can find a way to use the burning of sugarcane as an energy source, that's something that I'd be in favor for. But it's taking the totality of what the sugar industry does, because they do feed a lot of people, into account. So I'm not necessarily upset with them for the water quality because of all the canals and what they do. I believe it's more of the septic tanks issue. And as for the burning, I feel that we would need to work with them to create a better resource, because yes, you can feel it here 30, 40 miles away sometimes, the burning. And I've been to China and Taiwan, and I know that pollution is something that affects people. And so that is where my stance on with sugar.
Okay, thank you. The next question has to do with privatization. And another issue that's a national issue as well as a Florida issue is the privatization of, say, example, prisons. Where do you stand on the privatization issue?
Well, I'll speak on to the prison issue. It was difficult I had a conversation with someone today. What is the purpose of the prison system? Is it retribution or rehabilitation? So I think that is something our society needs to figure out first. Are we doing it to make sure that these people never come back or never learn anything new or have to adapt to an environment of kill or be killed? Or are we trying to rehabilitate them to be useful members of our society and help solve their mental health issues, economic issues, so that they can join our society at a equal level? Because once you have something on your record, it normally stays there for a very long time. So to answer your question is that I do feel the privatization of prisons is acceptable, because I do believe in the public-private partnership model for government. However, we need to figure out what are we trying to do. And I saw in one case where prisoners felt they deserved minimum wage for working at the prison. And according to the 13th Amendment, that is not the case. And so now nobody is doing that on a daily basis, or keep cleaning, cooking, maintaining, because if the federal government wanted to do that, it would cost an exorbitant amount to pay people at a minimum wage with a background check to do everything that a prison needs. So it's the totality of the circumstances where I do believe a privatization of the prisons is acceptable if we have the rehabilitation model, that people are trying to learn a skill and to get back to our society to be a part of it, rather than just be a repeat offender and just bide their time before they are retaliated against for doing something wrong, because they did not learn anything new.
Okay, so the next question we're going to move on to is to do with housing, and this is becoming a national issue as well as a huge issue in Florida, and I'm sure you're seeing it in Boynton Beach. Is how would you deal with the current housing rates? This is from Brent Perkins. He says his new lease will be promptly increased by $200. Does the government have the power to cap market rates? And could they also increase taxes for property owners?
So if I believe the question is, does the government have the power to cap market rates on private landlords? And the answer is no. They are allowed to create an agreement with private landlords to cap the rate. So for example, in the city of Boynton Beach, we have a community redevelopment agency that it has spent over $7 million of mixed use core land, which means you can build up to 15 stories, 150 feet. And we are working with the developer in exchange for that valued land and tax incremental funding for subsidized housing. And so that would last for the period, almost 20 years, so that there would be a reduction of market rates for the people that are living in that community. And so that's where the term affordable housing, it means different things to different people. Subsidized housing means that the government is somehow reducing the costs of the landlord in order to make up for the market that the landlord is missing out on. And so I believe that, yes, there needs to be more of the subsidization of housing. But to solve the issue, it is transportation. If we have fast, reliable forms of transportation, as we see in major metropolitan areas, it helps reduce the pricing of the costs of housing. For example, traffic. When you see lots of traffic, you normally see much higher prices because people don't want to spend, an hour or two waiting in their cars. So I feel that our government needs to help with the transportation issue, and that it is not just a supply and demand aspect of the housing. In addition, it gets very scary where we see private hedge funds, or let's just say investment funds, that are buying up single family homes for rental purposes. That is a point where we are consolidating wealth to people that have money, rather than having what our country always was hoping for, was that by paying off your home over the 30-year mortgage, you would be able to create equity and wealth. So it is a combination of having the subsidization by the government before the projects are being built, or as an example, the Section 8 vouchers. But we also have to keep in mind the perception that people have regarding mixed income communities. And so that is an aspect of the country's past where they did not want to have mixed income communities that we have to change.
What about the rent control issue? Where do you stand on rent control?
So I believe in the capitalistic aspect of it. And it's something where the tenant has the ability to create a lease, and that if they want to be there for a longer term, that is something that they can negotiate with the landlord to increase the rate at maybe 3% or 5% a year, so that so that this doesn't happen where the landlord can say, either you move out and I'm giving, or you pay $200 because I have a waiting list of people that are going to pay this new rate.
Okay, and I think Victor had an earlier question going back to your prison issue. Oh, I see a new question here. Are you firmly against corporate welfare and giveaway to corporations by both Republicans and Democrats?
So corporate welfare, I'm basically, as I mentioned earlier about subsidized housing, that is an example of corporate welfare where the government is giving money to a developer and giving them a 14% profit in order to build housing that is below the market rate. So we can't say that all corporate welfare is bad. What we can say is the bad deals that government sometimes gets themselves into for not creating assurances that something is going to go through. For example, I saw in Wisconsin where a company was given billions of dollars to hire so many people, and they hired that many people, they didn't hire any more. So it is the point where I do think it is advantageous because of the economies that go with having a industry in a community. Part of my time as mayor is I was able to travel the world to visit our sister cities. And I was able to see a stark contrast between the first sister city I visited, Rauma, Finland, that bought their shipyard. The city bought the shipyard because they knew they needed a place for their residents to work. Versus the second sister city that I went to, which was Haiti, which did not necessarily invest in jobs for their citizens. So I do feel that the government, as a service and that wants to collect income tax, needs to help provide for employment for its citizens. So there is the point where, do defense contractors benefit from corporate welfare, insurance companies, pharma companies? So absolutely, defense contractors benefit from corporate welfare, where 50%, I believe, of our income tax goes to the military. And the point is that is one of the major functions of our federal government, is to keep us safe from the world. However, how do we keep the world safe from us? Or how do we keep the world safe from others? And that is the difficult task that we're facing right now. One of the things that I have an idea for and plan is to move the AmeriCorps and the Peace Corps as part of the military, so that people can serve the military by helping this country and foreign countries. I don't feel that just by holding a gun, you are serving your country. We should allow for our young individuals to volunteer their service without the aspect of violence to be a part of it. And so that's one thing where I feel our military needs to shift some of its spending as a positive and proactive resource for the society rather than a reactive. For example, in Afghanistan, we built hospitals and schools, but not enough power plants to give them electricity or give the people enough electricity. And that is a huge aspect of the 20th century that made a huge difference in our country by having the federal government provide for everyone having electricity. And that is where I would hope our country would follow with the public-private partnership model to help developing countries have access to electricity, potable water, and to dispose of wastewater. So I do feel that there is a partnership needed between government and private industries. The issue then becomes is it accountable and transparent? The next thing was insurance companies. The point is that insurance companies, similar to utilities, is something that our government requires. In order to have car insurance, drive a car, you need car insurance, minimum level. In order to have a utility, the government normally has a public service commission to oversee that the private company is doing what they're supposed to be doing, being accountable and transparent. The problem then becomes is that the people who are overseeing the insurance companies and the utilities are appointed not by the people, but by the executive that may not, or that may have alternative motives for that appointment. Not to say that they're not qualified, but they may be biased because they used to work in the insurance industry and the utility.
Okay, so let's jump right into some foreign policy, since we're talking about you being on the national stage as a senator. What's your current stance on what's happening in, say, with the embargo to Cuba?
So we have a very big Cuban population in South Florida, and I spoke about this, and I was going to DC to speak to my Congresswoman Lois Frankel about this issue, along with the issues that are going on in Haiti and Venezuela. After 60 years, I do not feel that the embargo is working. I hear from Cuban expatriates that they feel that if the whole world agrees to single out Cuba, that they would fall apart. The regime would fall apart. I don't, besides Russia in the 1980s, I don't know too many other regimes that have fallen apart. And if we look at Russia now, it doesn't look like they've fallen apart too much anymore. So that is where I have a different approach, in that we should do our best, similar to what we are doing in Afghanistan and working with the Taliban, to make sure that our nonprofits, that our industries are doing what they can to support the people of Cuba. Because someone told me as I was flying to DC is that we may see the people hate the regime more than they love the Cubans that are there. And so I would not want the Cubans to suffer, because they, under my understanding of how governments works, it's not the people, it's not the generals that don't go hungry, it's the soldiers. And so I feel that there has to be a reimagining of what the embargo is and what the embargo isn't. And I think that if we allow for American-made goods and expand what we do trade with Cuba, that the regime is unable to stand, because the Cubans now have so many more resources than what the regime can handle.
Okay, but Cuba has made so many advances in the medical industry that we are not able to use or employ because of the embargo. So what you're feeling in relation to that we should be able to have more of an exchange. And I think we should really lift the embargo so that we can have that exchange. I recently had the pleasure of watching a movie called Frenemies, which really went into depth about the Cuban situation and how the actual people living in Cuba feel about things on the ground. And one of the things that they expressed was the fact that they were living in a peaceful situation. Yes, they admitted they didn't have a lot of amenities, but that didn't really matter to them because they were enjoying their lives. They had plenty of food. But now that capitalism was creeping back in, i.e. privatization of things, people were now becoming fearful, and people were now more prone to stealing because they wanted more and more and more. So I think that privatization in that area is proving that it doesn't work. So what's your feeling on that?
I didn't see the movie. And so one of the things that I do know about movies is that they're not 100% accurate. And so you may, and so with that, I can't say that all the people in Cuba feel that way, that they feel that because of the 3 or 4 years when American tourists were able to go compared to the rest of the world tourists were able to go, that they feel that there's more theft and stealing involved. One of the big things that we may be dealing with in Cuba is the cryptocurrencies and using that as an exchange. And so that is where I don't necessarily have your perception of what needs to be done with Cuba. However, I don't feel that this government is going to topple another government in Cuba, and I don't feel like that is our position. I think our position is to promote human rights all over the world. And the best way that we can do that is through the economics of things. And one of the things that we can do in order to do that is that I spoke to Senator Rick Scott about his Country of Origin Online Act, where if you go to Best Buy, they will show you where the product is made on the box. But if you go to bestbuy.com, you do not get to see where that product is made. Or if you go to an online clothing, you don't get to see where the product is made. But once you get the product, you can see what country it's made in. And I feel that is something where the American people need to realize is that if they don't like what a foreign country is doing, they should not buy that product. And so that is, hopefully I'm not offending anybody by saying that, but that is where we as a people should use our economic resources to promote the things that we like. And for example, it's to that point where if we know a business is taking money and doing things that we don't like them to do because of corporate governance, we shouldn't be going there.
Okay, so one of our panelists, Linda, has a question is, where do you stand on the Monroe Doctrine?
So Linda, just correct me if I'm not wrong, the Monroe Doctrine, is that the one where we stated we protect all the people, all the Western Hemisphere?
You're muted,
You're muted.
Linda.
Yes, my understanding of it is that we would not allow any communist or socialist governments in the Western Hemisphere, meaning the Caribbean islands and North America, South America.
No, it's the Monroe Doctrine. I just looked it up, was from 1823, and it was to prevent imperialism in the Western Hemisphere. And that is why you see imperialism that happened in Asia and Africa. But to go on the aspect of what is the United States role in preventing imperialism, it's something where we see it with Ukraine and Taiwan, where we are working with those states in order to make sure that their people are protected from foreign interests that they do not want. And it's very scary because those foreign interests are Russia and China. And we understand that that is a good size of landmass of our globe.
Okay.
So to answer that question, I would say is that yes, we have the obligation to prevent imperialism or countries overstepping their bounds just because they feel it's in their sphere of influence.
Okay, so
I'm not certain. I got the I got the name of the doctrine wrong, but the one that I'm referring to is from maybe the 40s or 50s, where the United States said that they would not allow any socialist or communist governments in the Western Hemisphere. And we both know that both Russia, well, not both, China, Russia, the United States, all interfere in other countries' politics. So we can't assume that if there's a communist or a socialist government elected by the people, that it must be Russia meddling or it must be China meddling, any more than we can assume that if there's a capitalist government elected, that it's the United States doing.
So from my knowledge is that we're a republic where we elect our leaders to represent us in the government. Whereas a communism country is that you don't have too much choice to who gets elected. It was interesting for me to research China, where they have the People's Party, but there are 8 other minor parties. But in order to be a minor party, you have to defer that the People's Party is the controlling party. And so that is the issue that we have right now in our country, is that I do not like the duopoly that is going on with the Republicans and Democrats. It's hard to visualize where we sit worldwide when we only have an option of left or right, where other European or Asian countries have multiple different parties to go for, but they don't pick their leaders, they pick their party. And that's a different type of parliamentary government than our republic. And so to basically state that, to say that our country is not to allow any sort of communist country or socialist country to come into, or I'm sorry, government, not country, communist government or socialist government to come in, may not well work for the people of that country. I have studied in China, and one of the reasons why it is the second largest economy right now is because the people are not trying to fight each other, because everyone is part of the same system with the 1.3 billion people. I'm not saying that that is for us as Americans, not something that I'd say that we would want, but it goes by the majority of things. And it's not to say that it can't happen if the majority wants it. And that is where I feel we need to have what your party is doing, is giving people the options that represent them the best. And that's what I am trying to do, is give the understanding and the perception that it is not a flip of a coin, that there are many paths that we can take to a better tomorrow. So I'm sorry for getting a little bit off topic, Linda, but to say that we know what's best for the world, it would be wrong. But to say what we know, what is right and what is wrong, is something that we do feel that we have the ability to do.
That's
Okay.
a great stopping point, folks. And I have to mute here because the dog is barking. So Karen.
Okay, so Stephen, we have 2 minutes left. If you'd like to wrap up and give us your, pitch in 2 minutes, we're here to listen.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry for all the questions that I didn't get to. I'd be happy to spend another 30 minutes if you want to have it not recorded, to speak about other things that I'd like to move forward. I think that what sets me off differently is that I am different. That as being the mayor, I see what goes on in government. And there was this quote that I've told a lot of people, and that, what the American public doesn't know is what makes them the American public. And it's scary because we want to make sure that our government is accountable and transparent. However, we know that we're not entitled to know everything that goes on, because it might scare us. It might make us not, hate our government for what they did, because they felt what was best. And so it's that middle ground that we have, where our federal government says after 70 years, there's nothing that should be classified. And it's what we're learning now from what happened 70 years ago that is helping us understand how to better run our country. But what I don't like to see is what's going on with our education system, where we are moving away from facts and moving towards perception. And that is very scary. And one of the things that we saw, in the past was the Scopes trial, where the theory of evolution was called into question. And I think that is where we have to look at ourselves now, is that we understand it, to understand that it is not necessarily 100% fact of survival by the fittest, but we do understand that life evolves. And we as a society need to evolve, our country needs to evolve, so that the majority who knows what is right is saying what is right, so that the people who think that the LGBTQ community shouldn't be around, that the people who think that there is no systemic racism, they are wrong. The facts is that humans are humans, and they should be able to love whoever they would like to love. In addition, our country has made many mistakes in the past, and it is our opportunity to correct them. And the biggest mistake is perception. We got to make sure that people understand that we are all humans, and that we can accomplish more by working together than working against each other.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for your time. And with that concludes our live stream edition. And Elise, I hand it back over to you now.
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, definitely, perhaps we could have another chat with you, Stephen, but for this evening, we're all finished. Thank you very much.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. And yeah, the one thing I forgot was my website, stephenbgrant.com. So.
And you are registered NPA, right?
That is correct. In December of 2020, I dropped my Republican hat, because when they said the election was stolen, I thought the lies and the hypocrisy that they did with the Supreme Court justice was too much, because it wasn't an individual, it was the party.
And I congratulate you for that.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Stephen.
Thank you very much.
And so if you want to give me the questions, I don't know if I'm able to copy them. Hold on.
I can email them to you.
Yeah, I'd be happy.
Is there a way to save the chat for so that Mr. Grant can have the questions?
Yeah, it's
If you
Yeah,
can
but
email them,
what we really need to do, though, however, is we're still live, and what we really need to do is end this broadcast at this point. Thank you so much.
Okay, so say good night, everybody.
Good
Night.
night. Thank you.